and Annie, and today we are going to be going over the Angolan Civil War, as well as the impact that it had on the Cold War. Although this category also lists India, we won't be going over that. Let's begin with some historical context for the topic. Angola is a small nation in Central Africa. Angola was under Portuguese rule for about 500 years. The Portuguese had little respect for the Angolan way of life and gave citizens very little freedom. Although these oppressive tactics have been effective in the past, public distrust of the regime began to grow dramatically in the early 20th century. Eventually, a few distinct political parties emerged in hopes of liberating Angola from Portuguese rule. These groups, specifically the MPLA, UNITA, and FNLA, had contrasting ideologies that lasted long after Angola had achieved independence from the Portuguese.
As tensions between the three groups increased, the United States and the Soviet Union began to provide military aid to their respective parties. This both escalated the conflict in Angola and deepened pre-existing tensions between the two powers. According to the CIA document, which is called the Intelligence Memorandum, Soviet and Cuban intervention in the Angolan Civil War, the global powers involved in the Cold War gave support to the opposing sides in the Angolan Civil War. This deepened existing tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union.
We provided information on the leaders of MPLA, UNITA, and FNLA on this slide. We also provided clarifications for those confused with wartime alliances. In our slide, we tell you that the MPLA was supported by the Soviet Union and the UNITA was supported by the US and the Bandu, Angola's largest ethnic group. The FNLA contributed heavily to Angola's independence from Portugal, but didn't play a huge role in the Civil War.
There are two main causes to the Angolan Civil War. The first was the competition for power within the country. The MPLA, UNITA, and the FNLA had initially signed the Alva Accord, ending the Angola War of Independence. However, pre-existing desires for supremacy and extreme feelings of nationalism precipitated a power struggle between the MPLA and the UNITA. The second cause was the increasing tensions outside of the country. The increasing tensions between the US and the Soviet Union drove these two countries to use Angola as a surrogate battleground.
Because Angola was in the Civil War, it was an easy target for the Soviets or Americans to initiate a proxy war. A proxy war is a conflict between two countries in which neither of them engages the enemy directly. In this case, it was the US with UNITA against the Soviet Union with MPLA. The US and the Soviet Union escalated the scope of this war by supplying the different groups with large amounts of military aid and equipment.
According to the preface of the CIA document, the Soviet Union intervened militarily in the Angolan Civil War. The CIA is a national security organization in the U.S. Even though this document seems biased, pro-USA, the author doesn't criminalize the actions of the Soviet Union in any way. On the contrary, the document presents information in a clear and factual way, making it a reliable source. Fortunately, we also got a chance to talk to a U.S. government official who had political connections within the Soviet Union. We won't reveal his identity for security reasons, but he and his team collected information for the failure of diplomacy document. He explained how the Soviets were forced to intervene militarily on behalf of the MPLA in the conflict because the U.S. was not willing to work things out peacefully with them in Angola. The official told us that the United States was eager to act on the Soviet and Cuban intervention. They did this by, at first, supporting the UNITA political party and later rallying smaller African states to revolt against the Soviet Union. This escalated tensions and lengthened the Cold War.
To reiterate, the Angolan Civil War was a conflict that involved countries from all around the world. The conflict was precipitated by a skirmish between the MPLA and the UNITA, which were popular political parties at the time. Although the groups had fought together for Angolan independence, they competed for sovereignty over the newly independent nation. The conflict escalated when larger nations like the United States and the Soviet Union began to provide material aid to the two groups. Most notably, the Soviet Union supported the MPLA, and the US supported the UNITA, or the Bandu, which were the largest ethnic group in Angola.